A rancher hid an Apache mother and her son. Now she wants him to be the father of the next child. The sun was just beginning to rise over the wide, dusty plains, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The rancher, a tall, broad-shouldered man with weathered hands and a face carved by years of hard work, stood at the edge of his property. His eyes scanned the horizon, where the grass swayed gently in the morning breeze. Life on the ranch had always been quiet, predictable, and sometimes lonely. He loved the wide-open spaces, the smell of fresh earth, and the rhythm of the land, but it was a lonely life nonetheless. That morning, as he walked along the worn path leading to the barn, he noticed something unusual. Near the edge of the trees that bordered his land, there was movement. At first he thought it might be an animal, maybe a deer or a coyote, but then he saw them, two figures, a woman and a boy, hiding among the shadows. The woman's face was partially covered by a blanket and the boy clutched her hand, his small frame tense and wary. They looked frightened, and their clothes were torn and dusty, signs of a long journey or perhaps an escape from danger. The rancher's heart tightened. He had seen many travelers and wanderers pass by, but something about them made him pause. They weren't simply lost, they were hiding. He could see it in the woman's eyes, the way she scanned the open land, the way she kept pulling the boy closer. He knew instinctively that they were in danger. His first thought was to turn away and leave them to their fate. It wasn't the first time he had come across people in need, and the world could be harsh. But then he noticed the boy's small, frightened eyes looking at him, and something inside the rancher softened. He couldn't ignore them. Carefully he approached, keeping a safe distance. The woman lifted her head slightly, and for a moment their eyes met. There was fear there, yes, but also a silent plea, an unspoken request for help. The rancher nodded slowly, a gesture of reassurance. He didn't speak. He didn't want to scare them further. Instead, he motioned for them to come closer, staying still to show he meant no harm. The woman hesitated, her grip on her son tightening, but eventually curiosity and hope overcame fear. They emerged slowly from their hiding spot, eyes wide, watching his every move. "Are you alone?" the rancher asked gently, keeping his voice calm. The woman shook her head. "No, we need shelter," she whispered, her voice trembling. He could hear the strain in her words, the exhaustion that clung to her like a heavy blanket. She was tired, scared, and desperate, yet there was a quiet strength about her. The boy tugged at her sleeve, looking at the rancher with a mix of fear and curiosity, unsure whether he could trust this stranger. The rancher studied them for a long moment. He knew the land well, every tree, every hill, every hidden corner. If he could offer them shelter, no one would find them. It would be a secret, a hidden refuge in the vastness of the plains. His decision was made quietly and firmly. "Follow me," he said. They hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded. Slowly, carefully, they began to walk with him toward the ranch. As they approached, the woman's eyes widened at the sight of the ranch buildings. They were simple, sturdy, and practical, built to withstand the elements, but they radiated safety. The rancher led them to a small cabin at the edge of the property. It wasn't much, just a single room with a fireplace, a wooden table, and a few chairs, but it was warm and secure. He opened the door and gestured for them to enter. The woman and her son stepped inside cautiously, looking around with cautious relief. For the first time in days, perhaps weeks, they felt a hint of safety. The rancher went outside briefly to gather supplies, some bread, cheese, and a few blankets. When he returned, he offered them to the woman and her son. She accepted them with gratitude, her hands trembling as she took the food. The boy hesitated at first, looking at the rancher, then took a small piece of bread, his small fingers brushing against the rough, calloused hands of the man who had offered them safety. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Trust was fragile, but it was beginning to form. Night fell over the ranch, and the three of them sat near the fire. The flames danced and flickered, casting shadows across their faces. The woman finally spoke more openly. She told the rancher her name was Yana and the boy was her son, Tay. She did not go into detail about why they were hiding, only that they were fleeing danger and that returning was not an option. The rancher listened quietly, offering no judgment, only a steady presence. Sometimes words were unnecessary, presence was enough. Over the following days, the rancher worked alongside Ayana and Tay. He taught Tay how to care for the animals, how to tend the fields, and even how to read the subtle signs of nature. The direction of the wind, the approach of a storm, the patterns in the grass that revealed hidden water. Yana, meanwhile, helped in the cabin, cooked meals, and slowly began to open her heart. They spoke in short sentences at first, careful and cautious, but gradually laughter began to echo across the ranch. Tay laughed at small jokes, at mistakes in chores, at the sight of the rancher trying to balance a bucket on his head while watering the chickens. Yana smiled more freely, the tension around her shoulders easing slightly with each passing day. The rancher found himself thinking about them constantly. He had always lived a quiet life, focused on the land, on survival, on routine. But now, their presence brought a warmth he hadn't realized he had missed. He didn't speak of it, he didn't need to, but he noticed the way Tay looked at him with admiration, the way Ayana's eyes softened when she thought he wasn't watching. They had become more than strangers in need. They were part of his life, part of his world. Yet even as peace settled over the ranch, a quiet tension lingered. Danger was never far away. The open plains were beautiful, but they were also unforgiving, and Ayana's past had a way of creeping close, reminding them that their sanctuary was temporary. The rancher remained vigilant, always watching the horizon, always listening for the smallest sound in the night. He couldn't promise safety forever, but he could promise that, for now, they would not face the world alone. As the days turned into weeks, routines formed. The boy, once shy and fearful, ran through the fields, helping with chores, learning, growing. Yana tended the garden, spoke quietly with the rancher about small matters, about the weather, about the animals, slowly revealing glimpses of the woman behind the frightened mother. The rancher, in turn, continued his work, but always with a watchful eye on his new companions. He had no illusions about the challenges ahead, but he felt a deep sense of purpose he hadn't known before. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned a deep orange, Ayana sat outside, Tay curled against her side, watching the rancher mend a fence in the distance. She felt a strange mix of gratitude and uncertainty. They had found safety, yes, but the future was unknown. Yet for the first time in a long while, she felt hope. Perhaps, she thought, it was possible to rebuild, to find trust again, to create a life where fear didn't always dominate. And as the rancher looked up from his work and nodded at them with a small smile, she realized that sometimes hope could be found in the most unexpected places. That night, as they settled in the cabin, the fire crackling softly, the rancher sat quietly, thinking about the journey that had led them here. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, only that today they were safe. And in a world that had been harsh and unforgiving, that was enough for now. Outside, the plains stretched endlessly, filled with both danger and promise, but inside that small cabin, a fragile bond had been formed. A bond that would, in time, grow stronger and shape all their futures in ways none of them could yet imagine. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet rhythm of life on the ranch began to settle in for the three of them. The sun rose and fell over the wide plains, painting the landscape in shades of gold and green. Tay, the young boy, had grown more comfortable with the routine. He chased chickens across the yard, helped the rancher mend fences, and even learned how to milk the cows under careful guidance. Each day brought small victories, a task completed correctly, a timid smile, a laugh shared over a mistake. Yana, meanwhile, found herself adjusting to the rhythm of ranch life in ways she had never expected. At first, Every movement felt foreign, every routine strange, but slowly she began to find comfort in the stability the ranch offered. Cooking meals, tending a small vegetable garden, gathering firewood, all these tasks, though simple, gave her a sense of control over her life for the first time in months. She watched her son thrive and felt a mix of relief and pride. It was hard to believe they had found safety, yet here they were, alive, sheltered, and protected. The bond between the rancher and the mother and son deepened with each passing day. It was subtle at first, formed through shared work and quiet gestures, a helping hand, a nod of approval, a shared look of understanding. The rancher never pushed for conversation beyond what was necessary, but he listened when Ayanna spoke of her past in small fragments. She was cautious, revealing only what she felt safe sharing, yet over time she allowed herself to speak more freely. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned a soft lavender, the rancher sat with Ayanna outside the cabin while Tay played nearby. The air was filled with the sweet scent of grass and the distant sound of crickets. "It's peaceful here," Ayanna said softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The rancher nodded, his hands resting on his knees. "It's safe," he said simply. "For now, at least." His words carried both reassurance and the unspoken truth that danger was never far away. Ayanna sighed, a mixture of relief and lingering worry. "I never thought we'd find a place like this," she admitted. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we could breathe." The rancher glanced at her, noticing the subtle lines of exhaustion etched across her face. He wanted to say something to ease her burden, but words felt inadequate. Instead, he reached out and offered a simple gesture, a hand resting on the back of a chair near hers, a sign of presence and support. Ayanna looked at him, a faint smile forming on her lips, and for a moment the world felt less heavy. Tay ran up to them, breathless from excitement. "Look what I found," he exclaimed, holding up a small, smooth stone shaped like a heart. The rancher and Ayanna exchanged a glance, and Ayanna laughed softly, ruffling her son's hair. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice warm. The rancher nodded in agreement. "Keep it safe," he added. In that simple moment, a sense of normalcy settled over them, a fleeting, precious peace that made the hardships of the past seem distant, even if just for a while. But peace, as they soon learned, was fragile. One morning, the rancher noticed signs of movement along the edge of the property. Footprints, disturbed grass, the faint trace of someone or something passing near the tree line. He did not speak of it immediately, but the worry settled in his chest like a heavy stone. Ayanna noticed his tension but hesitated to ask. She knew enough about the world outside the ranch to understand that danger could appear without warning, and fear often came without notice. Over the next few days, the rancher took extra precautions. He reinforced the fences, checked the barn for weak points, and set small, subtle traps, not to harm anyone but to alert him if someone approached. Ayanna helped him, her movements careful and deliberate. She trusted him, but the constant awareness of threat weighed heavily on her. Tay, sensing the tension, became quieter, more observant and cautious in his play. The ranch, once a sanctuary, now carried the subtle undercurrent of fear, the kind that whispers that safety is never guaranteed. Despite the tension, the connection between the rancher and Ayanna deepened in ways that neither expected. Shared glances, small smiles, and the comfort of working side by side formed a bond that was difficult to put into words. Ayanna began to feel a strange sense of gratitude toward the rancher, not just for his protection, but for his unwavering calm and kindness. He did not demand anything from her. He did not judge her past. He simply provided a steady presence, one she could rely on. And for someone who had known fear and uncertainty for so long, that was a gift beyond measure. One late afternoon, after the chores were done, the rancher taught Tay how to fish in the small stream behind the cabin. The boy's laughter echoed through the trees as he carefully followed the rancher's instructions, his small hands gripping the fishing rod with determination. Yana watched from the bank, a quiet smile on her lips, feeling a rare sense of contentment. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where her son could grow up with stability and safety, where fear would no longer dominate their lives. As the sun dipped lower and the sky turned a deep shade of orange, the rancher and Ayana walked back toward the cabin, carrying the small catch of the day. They walked in comfortable silence, the only sounds being their footsteps and the distant rustle of the wind through the grass. "You've done well with him," Yana said softly, her eyes meeting his. "He looks happy." The rancher nodded, his expression calm but thoughtful. "He's a strong boy," he replied. "He's learning fast and he's safe here. That's what matters." That night, as they sat by the fire, Iana spoke more freely about her past, about the journey that had brought her and Tay to the ranch, about the challenges she had faced, and about the fear that had shadowed their lives for so long. The rancher listened without interruption, his steady presence allowing her to speak without fear of judgment. Tay lay on a blanket nearby, listening to his mother's voice, feeling a sense of security he had never known before. Over the following weeks, life continued in a delicate balance of routine, growth, and vigilance. The rancher and Ayana worked together to improve the cabin, expand the garden, and care for the animals. Tay thrived in this environment, learning about the land, nature, and the value of hard work. Each day, the bond between the three of them strengthened, built on trust, respect, and a shared understanding that they relied on one another for survival and comfort. Yet, even in these moments of calm, the memory of past dangers lingered. Ayana often caught herself glancing toward the tree line, her instincts alert to any sign of movement. The rancher remained vigilant, teaching Tay how to stay aware of his surroundings, how to recognize danger, and how to respond calmly. These lessons were necessary, not just for survival, but for the boys' growing confidence and sense of security. Through it all, subtle feelings began to stir. Yana found herself thinking about the rancher in ways she had never anticipated, noticing his kindness, his patience, and his quiet strength. She admired his ability to remain calm in the face of uncertainty, and she felt a growing gratitude for the life he had provided them. The rancher, in turn, became increasingly aware of his own attachment to Yana and Tay. The routine of ranch life, once solitary and predictable, now carried a new meaning, a purpose tied to their well-being and happiness. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight spilled over the horizon, Ayana and the rancher stood side by side in the garden, tending to the growing vegetables. The air was crisp, the scent of earth and grass filling their lungs. Tay ran ahead, chasing after a rabbit that had ventured too close. Ayana glanced at the rancher, and for a brief moment their eyes met. There was understanding there, an unspoken acknowledgement that they were no longer strangers, no longer merely protector and protected, but a fragile, forming family. The days continued, each one bringing small victories, moments of joy, and the quiet reassurance that they were together and safe, for now. The rancher and Ayana learned to rely on one another, to share burdens and hopes, to face challenges as a united front. Tay thrived in this environment of care and guidance, his laughter and energy a constant reminder of why they fought to survive, and why the bond they had formed was worth protecting. As night fell and the stars emerged above the wide plains, the three of them sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets and quiet contentment. The rancher stared into the flames, thinking about the future, about the fragile hope that had taken root on this remote piece of land. Yana rested her head on her son's shoulder, feeling the warmth of safety and trust that had grown slowly, carefully between them. And Tay, tired from the day's adventures, drifted into sleep with a smile on his face, unaware of the world's dangers, yet secure in the protection of those who cared for him most. In those quiet moments, with the fire crackling and the plains stretching endlessly beyond the cabin, a sense of peace settled over them, a peace that was hard-won, fragile but deeply cherished. They had survived, they had found safety, and slowly they had begun to build something resembling family, trust, and hope. And though challenges and dangers would come again, for now they had each other, and that was enough. Life on the ranch had settled into a quiet rhythm, but with every peaceful day, the rancher could feel that change was coming. He noticed the small ways in which Ayanna and Tay had become part of his life, not just companions, but something more. The boys' laughter, once rare and cautious, now filled the open spaces of the ranch, echoing against the hills and fields. Ayanna, too, had become inseparable from the daily work, her presence bringing a warmth to the cabin and the land that had been missing for years. One morning, the rancher woke before dawn, as was his habit. He stepped outside into the crisp air and looked out across the plains. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The world seemed calm and beautiful, but he knew the peace was delicate. Danger had always been a quiet shadow at the edges of their lives. Even here, in this remote corner of the world, the past had a way of catching up. He didn't speak of it, but he carried the awareness like a second skin, watching the horizon and listening to the wind for any unusual sound. Ayanna emerged from the cabin, her hair loose and catching the morning light. She carried a small basket, ready to gather eggs from the hens. Her movements were careful and deliberate, but there was a sense of ease about her now, a confidence that had grown from the routine and safety of the ranch. When she saw the rancher, she smiled softly, a small but meaningful gesture that spoke of trust, gratitude, and perhaps something more. "Tay is still sleeping," she said quietly, glancing toward the cabin. "I'll check on him after breakfast." The rancher nodded, feeling a subtle warmth at her words. Her concern for her son was constant and natural, yet it reminded him of the bond that connected them, not just as protector and protected, but as a makeshift family, shaped by circumstance but strengthened by care. Breakfast was quiet, a simple meal of eggs, bread, and fresh milk. The three of them ate together, and the rancher noticed how Tay's small hands eagerly reached for his food, how he glanced up at Ayanna for approval, and how the boy's eyes occasionally met the rancher's with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. In that moment, the rancher realized how much he had come to care for both of them. He had never expected to feel this attachment. The boy had become like a son, and Ayanna had become more than a guest or a friend. She had become an anchor in his life. After breakfast, the rancher and Tay worked in the fields, while Ayanna tended to the animals. As they worked, the rancher taught the boy more than just farming skills. He taught him patience, how to observe the land and how to approach tasks with care and thought. Tay listened intently, asking questions and trying to imitate every movement. The rancher noticed how quickly the boy was learning, how much potential he had, and he felt a surge of pride. Meanwhile, Ayanna moved among the animals, feeding the chickens, brushing the horses, and talking quietly to the cows. The rancher observed her from a distance, noting how calm and competent she had become. She had transformed from a frightened, cautious woman into someone who was strong, capable, and resilient. He admired her silently, but he also felt the weight of something deeper, a growing awareness that his feelings for her were changing. The turning point came one afternoon when Ayanna approached the rancher while he was repairing a section of the fence near the tree line. Her expression was serious, but her eyes held a quiet determination. "I need to speak with you," she said softly, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. The rancher set down his tools and wiped his hands, sensing the importance of what she was about to say. He nodded, encouraging her to continue. Ayanna took a deep breath, looking out across the fields as if searching for the right words. "I've been thinking about the future, about Tay, and about what this life could be," she began. Her eyes met his, steady and clear. I want him to grow up with a family, someone he can rely on, someone who will protect him, guide him, and love him. And I want you to be a part of that family. I want you to be his father figure. I want you to be the father of my next child." The rancher froze, his mind racing. Her words were unexpected, profound, and overwhelming. He had never anticipated that the bond he had formed with Ayanna and Tay would lead to such a request. Emotions surged within him: loyalty, protectiveness, fear, and something deeper, more complicated. He cared for her deeply, but this was a commitment far beyond anything he had imagined. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, searching for the right response, the right words to convey the mixture of emotions inside him. Ayanna watched him, her heart pounding. She had spoken from the place of hope and trust, but the fear of rejection lingered in her mind. She had lived a life filled with uncertainty and danger, and to ask someone to become part of her family was an act of faith. She was laying herself bare, revealing not just her desires but her vulnerability. The rancher's silence was heavy, but not unkind. It was the weight of thought, the consideration of the life they could build together. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm but deliberate. I care for both of you," he said. "I've come to rely on you, on Tay, on this life we've created. But it's a serious choice. It's not just about now. It's about the future, about responsibility, about the kind of life we want to build together." His words were careful, honest, and thoughtful. He was not rejecting her. He was weighing the gravity of the decision, the consequences it would bring, and the responsibilities he would assume. Ayanna nodded, understanding the hesitation. "I know it's a lot to ask," she said quietly. "I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe it could work. I trust you, and I trust that you could help me give Tay the life he deserves." Her words carried sincerity and hope, but also the weight of lived experience, the understanding that survival alone was not enough. Tay needed more than safety. He needed family, love, and stability. The rancher looked at Tay, who was playing nearby, collecting stones and lining them in careful rows. The boy's laughter and focus reminded him of the fragility of life and the importance of nurturing it. He thought about the days they had spent together, the bond that had grown, and the trust that had been placed in him. To take on this role would be a challenge, a commitment, and a responsibility he could not take lightly. But the idea of building a family, of providing love and stability, filled him with a quiet sense of purpose. After a long pause, he finally nodded. "I will do it," he said, his voice steady. "I'll be there for Tay, I'll be there for you. We'll figure this out together." Relief and gratitude washed over Ayanna's face, and she smiled softly, a mix of hope and joy. The rancher felt a similar warmth, a deep satisfaction in knowing that he could make a difference in their lives, that he could be the anchor they needed. In the days that followed, the dynamics on the ranch subtly shifted. Their bond deepened, now underlined by shared commitment and mutual understanding. The rancher found himself thinking more intentionally about the future, about the home they could create, about the lessons he would teach Tay, and the care he would provide Ayanna. Ayanna, too, began to envision a life where fear and uncertainty did not dominate, where love and trust could flourish. And Tay, unaware of the adult conversations shaping his world, thrived in the warmth and stability surrounding him. Despite the newfound hope, the rancher remained vigilant. He knew the world outside the ranch was not safe. The shadows of the past could return, and challenges would arise that might test their resolve. He prepared accordingly, teaching Tay survival skills, reinforcing the fences, and making subtle improvements to the property. But these actions were no longer born purely of duty. They were acts of love, of commitment, of the desire to protect and nurture the family he had chosen. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills and the sky glowed a deep orange, the three of them sat outside the cabin, sharing a quiet meal. Tay played with a small stick, drawing shapes in the dirt, while Ayanna and the rancher spoke in soft tones about the days ahead, the crops, the animals, and the possibilities of the future. The air was filled with a sense of calm, hope, and subtle anticipation. They had faced uncertainty, danger, and fear, yet here they were, together, safe, and beginning to build something lasting. That night, as they settled by the fire, the rancher reflected on the turning point they had reached. Life on the ranch would never be the same. Their bond, once fragile and cautious, had transformed into a foundation for the future, a family formed not by circumstance alone, but by trust, care, and deliberate choice. Ayanna rested her head against Tay, her eyes shining with quiet joy. The rancher watched them, feeling a profound sense of purpose, knowing that the days ahead would be challenging, but that together they could face whatever came their way. And as the stars twinkled above the wide plains, the rancher felt a quiet certainty settle within him. He had chosen this path, chosen to protect, nurture, and love. And in that choice, he had found not just responsibility, but hope, belonging, and the beginning of something extraordinary. Life on the ranch had grown steady and comforting, yet the rancher knew better than to let himself grow too relaxed. The plains, though beautiful, were full of hidden threats. The wind could carry news of their presence to the wrong ears, and danger could arrive without warning. He noticed small signs, broken twigs near the tree line, the distant sound of hooves at night, a shadow that seemed to linger just a little too long, and he understood that safety was never permanent. One morning, as the first light spilled over the horizon, the rancher and Tay went to check on the horses. Tay ran ahead, laughing, his small boots kicking up dust as he chased after a stray chicken. The rancher followed slowly, scanning the tree line, his hands resting on the reins of the horses. Suddenly, he noticed footprints leading from the edge of the woods toward the barn. They were fresh and hurried, and though they were careful, the tracks suggested more than an ordinary traveler. Someone had come looking for them. The rancher's heart tightened. He motioned for Tay to stay close, keeping his voice calm. "We'll check the barn quietly," he whispered. Tay nodded, his small face serious. The boy had learned to read danger in the rancher's expressions, and he understood the importance of caution. Together they approached the barn, every sense alert. The rancher pushed the door open slightly and peeked inside. Nothing appeared disturbed, but he could feel the tension in the air, the invisible weight of someone having been there. Later that day, he discussed the situation with Ayanna. She listened carefully, her face calm but her eyes alert. "We've been careful," she said quietly, "but someone might still be searching for us. They could come again." The rancher nodded. "Then we prepare. We can't let fear stop us, but we must be ready." They worked together, reinforcing doors and windows, hiding supplies, and creating safe spots where they could take cover if necessary. It was exhausting work, but it gave them a sense of control in a world that had often felt uncertain and dangerous. Tay, sensing the tension, grew quieter than usual. He no longer ran freely through the fields, but instead stayed near his mother or the rancher. The boy was perceptive, understanding that this was not a time for careless laughter. Yet, he was still learning, still a child, and the rancher knew that he needed to preserve Tay's sense of normalcy even while teaching him caution. "We'll be okay," the rancher said one evening, sitting by the fire with Ayanna and Tay. "We have each other and we're careful. That's what matters." Despite the looming threat, the bond between the three of them grew stronger. They worked side by side in the fields, shared meals, and tended to the animals together. Every day, the rancher observed Ayanna with admiration. Her courage, patience, and resilience impressed him. He also noticed how deeply she cared for Tay, and how much love and thoughtfulness she brought into every action. He realized that she had survived hardships he could scarcely imagine, yet she still nurtured hope, both for herself and for her son. One afternoon, the rancher and Tay went to repair a section of fence along the northern boundary, where the wind often blew strongest. As they worked, Tay asked questions, eager to understand everything. "Why do we have to be careful?" he asked. The rancher paused, brushing sweat from his forehead. "Because the world isn't always safe," he said. "But knowing that and preparing for it makes all the difference." Tay nodded solemnly, trying to absorb the lesson. The rancher could see how quickly the boy was learning, not just about work in the land, but about trust, responsibility, and awareness. Meanwhile, Ayanna noticed a small change in the rancher's demeanor. He had always been quiet, serious, and careful, but now there was a deeper focus, a determination that suggested he was thinking beyond the immediate day-to-day tasks. She didn't know the exact nature of his thoughts, but she felt the weight of responsibility he had taken on, not just for Tay, but for her as well. And in that realization, she felt a renewed sense of trust, knowing that she could rely on him completely. A few days later, a storm rolled in from the west. The sky darkened and strong winds began to whip across the plains. The rancher immediately moved to secure the animals and protect the cabin. Tay helped where he could, and Ayanna guided the horses into the barn. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, pounding the roof and drenching the land in minutes. The storm was fierce, but they worked together seamlessly, each trusting the other's judgment. When the night came, they huddled by the fire, listening to the storm's roar, feeling the power of nature pressing against their fragile sanctuary. The storm passed by dawn, leaving behind broken branches, scattered hay, and small patches of flooded ground. They worked together to repair the damage, and in the process, a sense of accomplishment and resilience emerged. Despite the challenges, they had survived. The rancher noticed how Ayanna and Tay had adapted, how they had remained calm and focused even under pressure. The experience strengthened their confidence, and with it, their bond as a makeshift family. Yet, danger was not just natural. One evening, as the sun began to set, the rancher spotted a distant figure on horseback near the edge of the property. The figure moved cautiously, observing the ranch, and the rancher's heart sank. It was someone searching for them, someone from the past who had not forgotten. He quickly alerted Ayanna, who moved with quiet efficiency to gather supplies and ensure Tay was safe. The rancher's mind raced, thinking of the best way to protect them without escalating the situation. The intruder stayed for hours, keeping distance, testing the boundaries. The rancher watched closely, noting patterns, anticipating movements, and preparing for any possible confrontation. He could feel his pulse quicken, but he remained calm on the outside, knowing that panic would only make things worse. Ayanna remained composed and Tay stayed close, trusting the rancher's judgment. Together, they faced the unknown, relying on preparation, vigilance, and the strength of their bond. After several tense hours, the figure retreated into the distance. The immediate danger had passed, but the message was clear. Threats from the past could appear at any time. That night, the three of them sat by the fire, the rancher speaking quietly to both Ayanna and Tay. "We've handled today," he said. "We'll handle tomorrow too. We have each other, and that's what matters most." Ayanna nodded, squeezing Tay's hand, feeling both gratitude and resolve. They were safe for now, but their vigilance could not waver. The following weeks brought more challenges, though less immediate. Supplies had to be rationed carefully, and repairs to the fences and cabin were ongoing. The rancher continued teaching Tay survival skills, how to read the land, how to remain aware of his surroundings, and how to react calmly to unexpected situations. Ayanna assisted, ensuring the lessons were reinforced and helping Tay understand the importance of trust, preparation, and resilience. In the midst of the struggles, there were moments of joy. Tay learned to ride a horse with confidence, and Ayanna discovered the satisfaction of growing vegetables in the small garden, her hands working the soil, her mind quiet with purpose. The rancher occasionally joined them, guiding, teaching, and quietly marveling at the growth and resilience of both mother and son. Together, they celebrated small victories, the first ripe tomato, the repair of a broken fence, the successful completion of a long day's work. Yet underlying all these moments was the awareness that danger could return. The rancher kept watch, noting the patterns of travelers and animals, listening to the wind for any unusual sounds, and preparing for the possibility of an intrusion. Gianna supported him, helping him maintain a calm and organized approach, and Tay, slowly but surely, understood the importance of being aware, being careful, and relying on the people who cared for him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky glowed in deep shades of orange and purple, the rancher, Ayana, and Tay sat quietly outside the cabin. The day had been long and exhausting, but they were together, safe and connected. The rancher looked at Ayana and Tay, realizing that the challenges they had faced had strengthened not only their skills and awareness, but also their bond. They were no longer simply a mother and son seeking refuge. They were a family, resilient and united in the face of adversity. The night settled over the plains, the stars emerging one by one in the darkening sky. The rancher felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that they had survived another day, faced another challenge, and grown stronger because of it. He glanced at Ayana, whose eyes reflected both trust and determination, and then at Tay, whose small body rested peacefully, unaware of the threats that had loomed so close. Together they had endured storms, intruders, and the constant tension of uncertainty, and they had come through it with courage, care, and an unbreakable bond. In that moment, the rancher understood the true strength of what they had built together. Safety, love, and trust were not gifts. They were earned through vigilance, compassion, and the willingness to face challenges head-on. And though they could not predict the future, they knew that as long as they remained together, they could withstand whatever hardships might come. The morning sun rose slowly over the ranch, casting a soft golden light across the wide fields. Birds chirped in the trees, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of earth and grass. The stormy days and tense nights had passed, leaving behind a sense of calm and relief. For the first time in months, perhaps years, the rancher, Ayana, and Tay could breathe without fear pressing down on their shoulders. The challenges of the past had tested them, but now they were stronger, more united, and ready to embrace a life that was theirs to shape. Tay ran across the yard, his laughter ringing through the air, chasing after a butterfly that danced in the sunlight. His movements were carefree, full of energy and joy, a stark contrast to the quiet, cautious boy who had first arrived at the ranch. Gianna smiled, watching him with pride. The boy had grown in confidence, skill, and happiness, a testament to the care and stability they had been able to provide him. She felt a warmth in her heart, knowing that despite everything, Tay was safe, thriving, and loved. The rancher leaned against the wooden fence, observing the scene with a quiet satisfaction. He had come to the ranch seeking solitude and routine, a life shaped by the land and its demands. Yet he had found something far greater, a family, trust, and a sense of purpose that had grown from the bonds they had formed. He noticed how Ayana moved among the animals, calm, confident, and capable, and how her eyes softened whenever she looked at Tay. In those moments, he realized that life, though unpredictable and often harsh, could also be beautiful, rewarding, and full of hope. After breakfast, they worked together in the fields. Yana carried a basket of freshly picked vegetables, while Tay helped the rancher mend a section of fence. Their movements were coordinated, practiced, and filled with a sense of harmony. The rancher taught Tay how to properly secure the posts and tighten the wires, while Ayana showed the boy how to carefully handle the fragile plants. It was a day of routine, but there was something extraordinary in it, the quiet rhythm of life, shared effort, and the joy of working together. As the day wore on, Yana and the rancher found a quiet moment by the edge of the barn. She looked at him with a gentle smile, her eyes reflecting gratitude and hope. "It feels like we can finally breathe," she said softly, The rancher nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. The tension, fear, and uncertainty that had marked their lives for so long were slowly fading. What remained was a foundation built on trust, love, and shared responsibility. He reached out, taking her hand in his, and she did not pull away. In that small, silent gesture, they acknowledged the bond that had grown between them, a bond of mutual respect, care, and the beginnings of deeper love. Tay ran over, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers he had picked. "For you," he said, offering them to Ayanna. She laughed softly, accepting them, and then looked at the rancher. "He's learning to share his kindness," she said, her voice full of warmth. The rancher smiled, feeling a swell of pride. It was in these small moments, these simple acts, that the beauty of their new life revealed itself. Love, care, and hope were woven into every action, creating a tapestry of connection and belonging. In the following days, the rancher and Ayanna began making plans for the future. They spoke quietly of the home they wanted to build, improvements to the cabin, and ways to ensure Tay's happiness and safety. They worked together to plant new crops, repair the barn, and expand the garden. Each task brought them closer, teaching them patience, cooperation, and the value of shared dreams. The rancher felt a sense of purpose he had never known, while Ayanna found a stability and hope she had long thought impossible. One afternoon, as the sun began to set in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Ayanna approached the rancher with a thoughtful look. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what comes next, about our life, our family, and how we want to grow." The rancher listened carefully, his expression calm but attentive. "We've survived so much," she continued, "but now I want more than just safety. I want happiness, love, and a life where Tay can grow up free from fear." The rancher nodded, understanding completely. He had come to share that dream as well, a future filled with care, trust, and the promise of something better. That evening, they sat by the fire outside the cabin, Tay asleep nearby, and spoke quietly about the changes they hoped to see. They discussed planting more crops, building a new section of the cabin, and creating a small play area for Tay. Each idea was small but meaningful, a step toward stability and joy. The rancher realized that these plans, though simple, carried immense significance. They represented hope, growth, and the ability to shape a future together. In the following weeks, their life began to feel more complete. Tay continued to grow, learning new skills, exploring the land, and forming a deep trust with both the rancher and his mother. He learned to ride a horse confidently, help with household chores, and even assist in caring for the smaller animals. Each achievement was celebrated, a reminder that progress, no matter how small, was worth acknowledging. Ayanna, too, found joy in the daily rhythm of ranch life. She discovered satisfaction in her work, pride in Tay's growth, and a deep sense of trust in the rancher. She felt secure for the first time in years, able to imagine a life where fear did not dominate, where love and care could thrive. The rancher, observing her strength and kindness, realized how much she had endured and how much she had contributed to building the life they now shared. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the fields, the rancher and Ayanna walked along the edge of the property together. They spoke quietly about the future, about the changes they wanted to make, and about the life they hoped to create. There was a calmness in the air, a sense that the challenges of the past were behind them, and that the possibilities ahead were bright. Their bond, tested through danger, fear, and uncertainty, had grown stronger, rooted in trust, care, and mutual respect. Tay ran ahead, laughing, chasing after a rabbit that darted through the tall grass. The rancher and Ayanna paused to watch him, sharing a quiet smile. "He's happy," Ayanna said softly. "He's growing into the boy he was always meant to be." The rancher nodded, feeling the truth of her words. Safety, love, and stability had allowed Tay to flourish, and in turn had strengthened their bond as a family. The next few months were filled with growth and renewal. The rancher and Ayanna worked together to expand the garden, repair and improve the cabin, and care for the animals. Tay learned new skills every day, from reading the land to understanding the patterns of nature. They celebrated small victories together, laughed at minor mistakes, and supported each other through challenges. Each day reinforced the trust and connection they shared, building a life that was both secure and full of hope. One quiet evening, as they sat together by the fire, the rancher looked at Ayanna and Tay and felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had found a family in the most unexpected of places, a mother and son seeking refuge, now thriving and safe under his care. The bond they shared had been forged through hardship, strengthened through challenges, and now blossomed into something enduring and meaningful. Ayanna leaned against him, her hand resting gently on his arm. "I never imagined life could be like this," she said softly. "But with Tay, it feels right." The rancher squeezed her hand gently, feeling the truth of her words. They had survived storms, threats, and fear, yet now they were building a life filled with hope, love, and purpose. As the night grew quiet and stars twinkled overhead, Tay slept peacefully in the cabin, unaware of the worries that had once shadowed their lives. The rancher and Ayanna watched the night sky together, feeling a profound sense of calm. They knew that challenges would come again, as they always do, but for now they had each other. They had safety, trust, and love, a family forged in adversity and strengthened by care. In the days that followed, their life on the ranch continued with steady routine and quiet joy. The rancher and Ayanna worked side by side, caring for Tay, the animals, and the land. They planted more crops, repaired fences, and explored ways to make the ranch more comfortable and welcoming. Every action, small or large, was a step toward a brighter, more secure future. Tay grew taller and stronger with each passing day, his laughter filling the wide-open spaces, his curiosity endless. He learned to ride a horse with ease, help with the chores, and understand the lessons of the land. He saw the love and trust that surrounded him and began to understand the meaning of family, not just by blood, but by care, protection, and shared experience. And as the rancher watched Tay run across the fields, with Ayanna following and the sun casting a warm glow over the land, he knew that they had reached a turning point, a moment where fear and uncertainty no longer defined their lives. They had built a family, a home, and a future together, forged in the crucible of challenge but tempered by love, trust, and resilience. Life on the ranch was not perfect, but it was real, filled with love, hope, and the promise of tomorrow. Together, they had faced the hardships of the past, learned from them, and created something lasting, a life where fear no longer ruled, where family and trust provided the foundation for growth and happiness. And as the sun set over the plains, casting a golden light over the fields and cabin, the rancher, Ayanna, and Tay stood together, ready to embrace the life they had fought so hard to create.